news desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brandon Matisse says, "Give me the rock." Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Thursday, February 12th, 2026. It's my official duty to welcome you into episode 531 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome back to the Star Room here at the Jerome Schottenstein Center, and it's a little bit past midnight here. Yesterday, only a couple hours ago, but yesterday, Ohio State rebounded from its 21-point loss to Michigan on this same court 3 days earlier, and rallied, took a lead, withstood a late charge, and emerged with an 89-82 win against USC in front of what I thought was a pretty good crowd. They announced it at 11,367, but it was loud. Granted, this crowd had a lot more things to cheer about than the much bigger crowd that was inside the arena on Sunday, but this was a much more entertaining, much more exciting, and honestly more complete game for Ohio State. If you throw out maybe the first 3 to 4 minutes of the game, Buckeyes trailed 43-40 at halftime and actually trailed for 19 minutes and 23 seconds of this game. They led for 15 minutes and 12 seconds, but once Ohio State took a lead in the second half, the Buckeyes had a brief 21-20 lead. Like I said, it was a little bit of a brutal start. Fell behind 15 to 6 in the early going. But then a couple minutes into the second half, Christoph Tilley hit 2 free throws, 14:23 to go. That put Ohio State ahead 51-49, and the Buckeyes would not trail from that point. So I guess you could call it a come from behind win. I guess technically by definition it was that. But there's a lot to talk about coming out of this game. Not the least of which is that Ohio State managed to avoid a loss that by itself wouldn't bury a resume, but certainly you're getting to that point in the schedule where you don't want to take any extra losses, and especially against a team that you are jockeying with for position in the Big Ten standings, where you are ranked comparably in all the major metrics. This was a game that Ohio State needed to take care of. You're playing a comparable team statistically, and you've got them on your home court. And Ohio State was able to find a way to get this one done and set up now this weekend's game against Virginia in Nashville. The Cavaliers ranked 15th in the country. That'll be an 8 p.m. game on Valentine's Day. That'll be on Fox. That's going to be a big one. Very interested to see how Ohio State matches up with an ACC team at this point in the schedule. It's not something that we've seen Ohio State do. The Cavaliers are 30th in adjusted offensive efficiency and 17th in adjusted defensive efficiency, according to Ken Pom. And boy, Virginia, since a 95-85 triple overtime loss to Virginia Tech on New Year's Eve, which frankly I had no idea that game took place. But since then, Virginia has won 10 of its last 11, with the one loss being a 5-point home loss to North Carolina. Now, granted, ACC ain't all that great, and you're talking about, in that stretch, like a double overtime 3-point win against Notre Dame, a 7-point win against Boston College. They did take care of Pitt by 20 points at home, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get back to this game at hand here. So, running down the box score right off the top here, there's a couple of numbers that jump out. First of all, Bruce Thornton led Ohio State with 21 points. He officially passed Kelvin Ramsey to climb to 5th place on the all-time scoring list at Ohio State. He got there early. He needed 5 points to tie, and he got that 6th point on a bucket. I posted the video. It's in my post-game takeaways. It's on my Instagram page, hoops_and_scoops. But Thornton got there with 9:38 to go in the first half with a jumper that made it 19-17 USC. And then Thornton was massive down the stretch, and we'll get into that here in a minute. So he finishes with 21. He also had 8 assists, which is the most for him since he had 10 in the win at Northwestern back on December 6th. Devin Royal had one of his strongest games, certainly recently. He finished with 19 and a team-high 7 boards. All 7 of them were on the defensive end. Ohio State and USC, after Ohio State was physically was unable to match the physicality Michigan played with, especially on the glass, Ohio State battled USC to a 32-32 draw when it came to rebounding. USC did have a 14-6 advantage in second chance points, but Ohio State battled on the glass in a way that it did not against the Wolverines. Ohio State also took one of USC's greatest strengths and was able to combat it by with some like-for-like aggression. The Trojans came into the game with the number 1 free throw rate in the nation. Number 1 free throw rate in the nation. They're as good as anybody at getting to the free throw line. Jake Diebler described this the day before the game as like they make it hard for the officials to make calls. Like they essentially make the officials decide on almost every possession if they're going to blow a whistle or not. And USC ended up going to the line and shooting 33 free throws, but Ohio State shot 25 free throws, and both teams made 24, which, for those of you who are great at your math, USC was 72.7% from the line, and Ohio State was 96%, 24 of 25. So both teams drew and committed, or each team drew and committed 21 fouls. Made for an occasionally clunky viewing experience, and boy, there were a lot. It was a parade to the free throw line at both ends, but I was impressed with the way that Ohio State didn't allow it to become a glaring free throw discrepancy like we've seen in some other games this season. So you end up Ohio State. Devin Royal drew 6 fouls in this game. Now, he only went to the line, and he was 3 of 3 from the free throw line, but Devin had 19 points. Team high 7 boards, all of them on the defensive end. He drew 6 fouls. He was 3 of 3 from the line. He was 8 of 8 from 2. He did miss all 3 3-point attempts that he took. That drops him to 2 for 23 now in his last 7 games from 3. So it's certainly something to keep an eye on, or continue to keep an eye on, I suppose. Ohio State as a team was 7 of 22 from 3. Devin was 0 of 3. And Bruce Thornton was also 0 of 3, continuing for him as well what has been a recent trend of his perimeter shooting dipping. Definitely looking like a more flat shot from Bruce right now. But he did respond at the free throw line, and Thornton went 11 of 11. So he finishes with 21 points on 5 of 11 shooting, but he goes 11 of 11 from the free throw line. He drew 8 fouls in this game. Also, again, dished out 8 assists. He had 2 steals. Did have 4 turnovers. USC made Ohio State pay for its turnovers. USC had 10 turnovers. Ohio State had 12, but USC had a 20-10 advantage in points off of those turnovers. Off the bench, Tayson Chapman played 21 minutes. He had 5 points in this game. He was only 2 of 6 from the floor, so not quite as prolific as he has been in some of his other games, but continue to give the Buckeyes some pop, hit a 3-pointer. So he finishes with 5. Amari Bynum with his most impactful game in a while. He finished with 11. He was 5 of 12. He had a shot blocked, and he's 1 of 3 from 3, but had a couple of just ridiculous dunks, including a pretty significant one that we'll talk about in a minute. Ohio State's defense in the second half really made things more difficult for USC, and I do think we saw a little bit in this one, some of what we saw in the game against UCLA, given that this was USC's second game on its final Midwest road trip. USC played at Penn State on the 8th, and then was here in Columbus on the 11th, and won't have to come back out this way again the rest of the season. I felt like you maybe saw some fatigue, some travel-related fatigue maybe creep in a little bit for the Trojans as the second half progressed. USC was led by Elijah Arenas, the freshman who continues to put up prolific numbers right now, especially with Chad Baker-Mazara out. Arenas had 25 points, but Ohio State made him work for it. He was 6 of 19 from the floor, 1 of 7 from 3. Now, he also drew 8 fouls. He was 12 of 16 from the free throw line. He hit some big shots and gave Ohio State some issues with his size. He's a 6'6 guard, and he hit at least, well, the one three-pointer that he hit was a big one, and it was late, and he just rose up over Bruce Thornton. He's got 4 inches on him and just drilled it. So he had a big night. Certainly was the guy that I think drew the majority of the scouting report for Ohio State. And then one other name just to mention on here, but Ohio State pretty heavily recruited Jerry Easter II, who's a Northwest Ohio native, played for Emmanuel Christian High School. And that is a team that played in my alma mater's league. Jerry Easter in high school put up 49 on my Northwood Rangers, and was, like I said, a high recruit target for Ohio State. Although that by the time he ultimately committed to USC, that wasn't quite as much the case, but they recruited him for a while. I wrote about him multiple times. His dad has some ties and relationship with Jim Jackson. But anyway, he ends up signing with USC, and he played 24 seconds in this game, didn't record a statistic. So he got a trillion, but he's not really popped for USC this season. So just thought that was a name people would recognize. So like I said, now Ohio State gets ready to go to Nashville this weekend to play Virginia. And I got a few things about this game that we just watched that I want to talk about. But first, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you subscribe, you'll automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our man Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them for us. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review. Please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks to everyone who's taken the time to do all those things. All right, so the first thing, and I think it's just probably the most obvious sort of low-hanging fruit here, is that this was a bounce-back game for Ohio State. There was certainly a script to be written of Ohio State had been kind of teetering on over the course of the season, and hadn't been able to punch above its weight and take down a team that it should. And then after an emotional loss, decisive loss to its rival, Ohio State comes out against a comparable team at home, drops that, and then is on a 2-game losing streak going into a top 20 neutral court game. Like, you could write that script pretty easily, and a lot of people, especially given the discourse I've seen online in the last couple of days, a lot of people I think were expecting that, or certainly were leaning in that direction. And I get it. This team again showed that it does have some resiliency and some toughness to it. It did not obviously play a perfect game. And like I said earlier, it was a little angsty at first. I mean, it was 15-6 USC, and the Trojans were doing what they wanted to do. They were getting to the line. They were drawing fouls. Ohio State was missing shots, and just it was a slowish start for Ohio State for sure. But then I felt like Ohio State adjusted, and Ohio State started to string some things together. And we saw this team over the course of the game respond in a way that matches up with how it is played over the course of the season. I wrote about this for the morning of the game, but the consistent thing about this inconsistent season for Ohio State has been that the Buckeyes have not had a losing streak. And, that's maybe not you don't hang a banner for that, certainly. And you would like to have like a winning streak or two to really hang your hat on. Ohio State really doesn't have that either. I mean, since starting 6-0, Ohio State's now 16-8. So the Buckeyes have gone 10-8 in their last 18 games. And there's a 2-game winning streak after the North Carolina loss when they beat Grambling State and then won at Rutgers. And there's a 2-game winning streak at home against UCLA and then the overtime win against Minnesota. Other than that, it's been win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. So starting with that Minnesota loss, Ohio State won in overtime against Minnesota, lost at Michigan. Won at home against Penn State, lost at Wisconsin. Won at Maryland, lost at home to Michigan. Now won against USC. This team has shown an ability to figure out a way to not let a loss bleed into the next loss. And I think that recognition, or that I don't know if you want to call it fortitude or whatever word you want to use, But I think we saw that on display down the stretch in this game. And it got weird here inside the shot tonight because after being down 9, once Ohio State took the lead in the second half, the Buckeyes never trailed. And when it was, there was 4 minutes to go, and USC called timeout because Amari Bynum and Bruce Thornton teamed up. They came up with a steal. Thornton pushed the ball up the floor and got it to Bynum, who threw down a just powerful slam dunk on the break. USC calls timeout. It had been 70-69, and this capped an 8-0 run for Ohio State. The place was roaring. It was louder in that moment than I think it was at any point on Sunday. So out of the timeout, Jordan Marsh draws a foul on a jumper. He hits 2 free throws, 3:46 to go. Ohio State's lead is now 7. Devin Royal draws a foul. He goes to the line for a 1-and-1, hits both with 3:25 to go. It's back up to 9. It's 80-71. But those 2 free throws for USC started a run of 5 straight possessions where the Trojans would score. And some of this was some reverting back to how Ohio State guarded earlier in the game, where they were getting called for fouls that they really shouldn't. USC is going to draw some of them, but they talked. Jake Diebler talked about it. We talked to Bruce Thornton and Devin Royal. They talked about it. Like, you had to avoid the avoidable fouls. Like, you're going to get called for some, but you had to be smart about it. And I felt like in this sequence, Ohio State wasn't great. Bruce Thornton fouled Elijah Arenas, and he has 2 free throws with 3:11 to go. So now, #all mixed up. Now it's 80-73. And then the offense started to get a little sloppy here for a minute. There's like a lob to Christoph Tilley that I don't know if it was blocked or if it was ruled a turnover or what it was, but USC gets the ball, goes the other way, and then Amari Bynum got called for a ridiculous foul. There was some weird officiating in this game. Jordan Marsh draws a foul on this play, but he didn't even touch him based on the replay that we saw in the arena. And I'm not a guy who bangs on the officiating. I just don't think there's any real merit to that. But he ends up being called for a foul on a 3-pointer. He hits 2 of the 3, so it's now 80-75 with 2:36 to go. So Ohio State has the ball, and John Mobley has the ball swatted out of bounds. And then the next inbound play also gets swatted out of bounds. USC challenges the call. It gets overturned. It's a turnover. So what happens now? USC comes down and gets a wide open 3-pointer from Jordan Marsh, and it's now 80-78. And then this is where it really gets weird. There was a lengthy clock issue as Ohio State inbounded the ball and tried to bring it up the court. Play ends up getting blown dead. They go over. This is the second time there was an issue with the shot clock, and there was 21 seconds on the shot clock, so it was very nearly a 10-second violation on Ohio State. Jake Diebler was calling a timeout to reset the 10-second count to get the ball back across midcourt, but the clock went from showing a minute 48 to a minute 47 to a minute 36. And then back to a minute 48. And eventually play would resume after they did award Ohio State a timeout. So there's this long just pause in the action. And for those of you that are my fellow nerds out there, in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are chasing down Darth Maul, and they go down they're on Naboo, and they go down that weird hallway with the ray, what's it called? Not ray shields, the stuff that the lightsabers can't cut through. I can't think of the word right now. And they have to just pause in the middle of this epic battle with Duel of the Fates playing behind him, and it's super cool. And everyone just has to reset and just wait it out until the energy beams turn off, and then they can resume the battle. That's what this felt like to me. That was where my brain went, because suddenly it's down to a 2-point Ohio State lead, and then play is stopped, and you're like, well, what's going to happen here? Who's going to use this one way or the other? And what ends up happening is they get the ball to Bruce Thornton, and he draws a foul on Cam Woods, goes to the free throw line. This is a 1-and-1 at this point, 1:34 to go, and he hits both. So it's back to a 4-point lead. Now, USC comes down, and Elijah Arenas misses a shot, but the offensive rebound goes off of both Bruce Thornton and Christoph Tilley. They both kind of have it, and it one of those plays goes out of bounds. Possession stays with the Trojans, And it ends with Arenas hitting the only three-pointer of the game. It's his only three-pointer of the game. It's from the left corner. He just rose over Bruce and hits the three. And it's 82-81. And so Ohio State responds by getting the ball back to Thornton, and he drives, draws a foul, hits the free throw, three-point play with 40.7 seconds left. USC would not have the ball again with it being within one possession. Thornton would ice it with two free throws with 22.5 seconds left, and then two more with 5.1 seconds left. So in this sequence here where USC gets within 80-78, Bruce Thornton scored Ohio State's final 9 points in the final minute 34 to put the game away. And going back a little bit further, so of the last 17 points that Ohio State scored, Thornton had 11 of them, Bynum had 2 of them, and Devin Royal had the rest. It was impressive to me to see Thornton just like will this team across the finish line and not let the Trojans find a way to make an upset. Maybe an upset. I mean, I guess Ohio State's technically slightly ranked ahead of them, but this was a game everyone knew Ohio State needed to win. And in those final 2 minutes, I thought Ohio State final 4 minutes rather, showed that this team is not perfect, but can close out games and can do what it needs to do to hold on to a lead late. Nobody bats 1,000 on that. We've seen, I mean, just look at college basketball has just been on a heater the last week. And you look at some of these results, whether it was Arizona, Kansas, or I don't want to talk about Duke, North Carolina. You can look at Wisconsin, Illinois, Purdue, Nebraska. These things get dicey late. And on this day, Thornton made sure that it never got too much for Ohio State. And I thought it did show, again, that this team has some stuff to it. It doesn't always make the right play. The shots don't always go in. But I thought, we've seen Ohio State teams fall behind, build a lead, and then lose it. How many times have we heard it? It's a game of runs, and they made their run and whatever. That has happened a lot in the last couple of years. But I thought it was an impressive response for Ohio State. And as far as Thornton goes, so he's now up to 1,950 points. So that puts him 40 points behind Jerry Lucas and Will Buford, who both have 1,990. Buford was actually in attendance in this game, for this game. So was Greg Oden, and I saw Scooney Penn as well. So quite a lot of talent there on the sidelines for this one here. Couple of just sort of injury type related notes. So John Mobley Jr. left the game for a little while. He had a drive. This is in the second half, and was coming down or trying to go baseline, and he ended up turning it over. And then at the other end, you could just see him looking at his right hand and not moving it, not moving his fingers at all. He was moving his wrist, but nothing else. And they got him out of the game. And I haven't seen the replay yet, but he was getting some immediate attention from the training staff. I believe it was a right pinky injury. They did tape his hand, and he hit a couple of threes after that. He finished 2 of 7 from 3, so he had 13 points on 4 of 10 shooting, but hit a couple of threes, 3 of 3 from the free throw line. So doesn't sound like the hand is anything to necessarily worry about. It does sound like the Buckeyes have been dealing with some illness here recently. Matthew Griachich was not with the team for the Michigan game because he was sick. And when I asked Jake Diebler about just kind of how sick maybe they've been after the game, he said that they've been dealing with some stuff like the Maryland situation didn't help. And if you're not familiar, Ohio State's trip back from Maryland got inadvertently or unexpectedly extended by a day. Ohio State was supposed to fly home after the game, and there was an issue with a de-icing truck, which continues to just become the bane for something that literally keeps us alive when we fly. It's also a real pain in the butt sometimes. And Ohio State had some issues, or the airport had some issues with the de-icing truck, and Ohio State's players and coaches ended up, instead of flying home after the game, at about 4 a.m., just getting a hotel near the airport and grabbing some sleep before they got home. And so, when you're playing, what was that? That was, well, I mean, that was the start of this sequence here of 5 games in 12 days. But like, if you're already a little bit under the weather and then like the trip gets extended and like you're not sleeping, you're like, this stuff adds up. And so it sounds like they've been a little bit under the weather recently, and enough that before shoot around, Diebler apparently told the team, like, yo, you got to leave whatever sickness you have, whatever illness you might have, whatever injury you might have. Like, you don't bring that with you on the court. Like, we're practicing, we're getting ready, and the same thing goes for the game. So nobody really pointed to that as like a significant issue or something that might have affected anybody's individual performance. That does seem like a thing that has kind of been around the team here. And you do see it across the nation right now. Like, this is the time of year for that in the sport, and teams are going to be randomly missing guys, and someone's going to come down with a sickness, and you just sort of hope it doesn't really spread. As far as like the rest of the roster, when we talked to Diebler on Tuesday, got a couple of updates on a few guys. So, like Brandon Knoll, he was asked, like, is he making progress? And Diebler said he has. He's trending in the right direction. This isn't a he'll be ready next week type of thing, but we're hopeful to get him back for the end of the season. Everything's moving in the right direction. As far as Josh Ojanwina goes, Diebler said he's able to do some things on the court in an individual aspect, working really hard to continue to progress. I've been really impressed with his voice, even from the sideline, and how he's been engaged with the team. He's got a ton of experience, obviously. That's been great to have. He's been with us on every road trip. We're a big fan of Josh and his progression. Clearly, unless like some rule changes, he's not playing this year. They haven't like officially said he's redshirting, but I think we can all conclude that he is taking a medical redshirt, and I would expect him to be Ohio State's starting center next season. He did point out that Griachich was dealing with an illness for the Michigan game. He said, like everybody, we're dealing with a little bit of that stuff. He was a guy a little under the weather, felt it was best to keep him separate day of the game, give him a chance to recover best he can, and keep everyone else healthy too. Now, other guy whose status is interesting for multiple reasons is Puff Johnson. So in this game, Puff played 15 minutes and 11 seconds. He had 8 points. He was 2 of 2 from the floor, which both shots were 3-pointers. He was also 2 of 2 from the free throw line. He had a steal, and it was an impactful steal early. It helped kind of turn the momentum a little bit. But like, Puff's been through a lot and went through a lot today. So Puff was dealing with a concussion. That's what kept him out. He missed the last 2 games. So just as he had strung together 3 straight games and was starting to get a little bit more comfortable, you could see the glimpses of it, had to sit out for a little bit. So he's been working his way back into game action. But on top of that, like, his ongoing status is kind of an open-ended question at this moment. So I spent the morning and the early afternoon, because I'm just a dumb sports writer. I don't know how long these things take. But he had his day in court today, or yesterday rather, the day of the USC game. And he's in court to get the temporary restraining order. I'm trying to think the right legal phrase here, but just essentially like, or permanently accepted to clear him to remain eligible for the remainder of the season. So the temporary restraining order was supposed to expire in early February, but then the NCAA had challenged something on it, and then it got moved to another court, and then that ended up kicking the whole process like a little bit further down the line until the judge gives her final ruling on this. He remains eligible, and my understanding is we won't get that ruling until sometime next week. But the morning consisted of Puff missed a lot of time with the team because he was in court trying to get this approved, and that was an interesting experience. Sitting in there and hearing the NCAA's arguments, and hearing Puff and his legal team explaining their side. Dave Dickerson was testified on his behalf, the assistant coach for Ohio State. Both he and Puff spoke were on the stand for about an hour. It was an interesting experience, and so there's no news yet, but that was Puff's day. And then he plays 15 minutes tonight in his first game in like a week and a half for a team that he just got eligibility for less than a month ago, and hits 2 3-pointers, one of which was just from way downtown. Busted play, ball ends up in his hands, and he just fires off this deep 3-pointer, and that went in. So he finishes with 8, continues to make an impact. I've got some stuff on him in the post-game takeaways, so you can read that this morning. A couple other just like quick things before I wrap this up. But there was just some interesting like post-game quotes in this game. Like I thought Bruce Thornton was interesting. He was asked about like his 8 assists, and I thought he kept it pretty simple. He said, "I just love to hoop. I just play basketball at a super high level. If I see a wide open guy, I'm going to hit him. If I'm open, I'm going to shoot it. It's not anything that's complicated. That's just how I play. That's just how I look at the game." I thought it was pretty good, matter of fact, like no BS type of answer from Bruce. He was asked about like overcoming the slow start when they're down 9 points early. He said, holding each other accountable. It was like, how did you like try to flip it? How did you what happened to enable you guys to overcome that? He said, holding each other accountable, yelling, bad language in huddles, and trying to get guys together. He said, we know what to do at this level. There ain't too many new schemes or new nothing, just small things. Take care of the ball, shoot quality shots. When you do those small things, it takes care of itself. It was also pointed out that he assisted on quite a few of Amari Bynum's dunks. And it was asked, like, what enabled you two to have like such good chemistry today? And he said, I told him to run the floor and I'll hit him. He ran and he was wide open. It's that simple. I'll give it to you if you're wide open. He ran the floor and was wide open and he got dunks. He also spoke. I thought this was an interesting little glimpse too into the relationship. So one other person who's not on the injury report but is definitely injured is Jake Diebler. So it turned out that in practice, both Bruce Thornton and Tayson Chapman were going after a loose ball, diving for the loose ball, and Jake had his back turned to the play, and they took him out, and he had some kind of knee injury, was walking rather gingerly to and from the post-game press conference. And so Bruce was asked about it. He didn't really like let on a whole lot as to what happened. And then the follow-up question was something about like, what's it like having a coach that like is in there practicing with you? Because I think the assumption was that it happened with Diebler like in there doing a drill, but that was not the case. He was on the side. Jake does work with the players a lot and is frequently in drills. But so Bruce basically said like, people who haven't seen our practices before and see that, they're probably like, what is he doing? Then he said it's probably his dream to get this head coaching job. And he talked about like moving up from like video coordinator to assistant coach to associate head coach to interim coach to head coach. He said, I feel like he takes full advantage of it each and every day. He gives 100% each and every day. You can't ask for anything more than that. I just thought that was an interesting like offering from Bruce. Like the question wasn't about like, what does the Ohio State job mean to Jake Diebler? But it was like a little bit of like a public voice of just like, I don't know, support is the right word, but I took note of that because that wasn't the question, but that ended up being part of the answer. Both Devin and Bruce talked about like how Puff has just kind of assimilated with the team. I meant to mention this a moment ago, and just how well he's fit in, how much they've enjoyed having him around. So I meant to mention that earlier. Here's something else I thought, and I'm probably need to write this, and maybe I should have put this in my takeaways. But my lead takeaway was about how like Bruce Thornton scored those 6 early points to move up on the scoring list, but the most important points that he scored were the ones that he scored late. So as Diebler was asked about Bruce becoming a top 5 scorer, he talked about like his just kind of consistency. And then he said Eric Kraft dealt with this a little bit. Guys who played really hard and really tough, you almost forgot how talented they are. Aaron Kraft was also really talented. Bruce Thornton is really talented. He said he's worked really hard to develop his skill at such an impressive level from an efficiency standpoint. And then he talked about like him climbing the scoring list. He said, the other cool thing, I'm a history buff of this program. So like when I'm told that there's a name he could pass, it's a reminder of some of the talented guys who've come through this program. He said, those guys need to be celebrated through this stretch too. The list of names he's going to potentially go past, there's some high-level players. And he cited like Will Buford's shot against Michigan State. He said, that's cool for me, and I hope our fans celebrate those guys too as this is happening, because it's a testament to the level of talent that's come through the program over the years. So maybe last thing here is just as we talk about Ohio State needing to win this game and needing to move on, like we'll see what what happens in the net rankings, and where this moves the needle for Ohio State. But Diebler was pretty upfront about it early on. He said it feels very crucial. It's a team with similar metrics, and it's a home game, similar standings in the Big Ten, all that stuff. He said we're going to keep facing that as the year goes on. But he did say, most importantly, results are critical right now. Most importantly, our guys responded in a big way, and responded with good physicality, utilizing each other to fix things in the game. I thought our connection was better than the last game. He said, it's a Big Ten game in February. There's going to be runs and challenging moments, but our guys stayed together, and our leadership was really good down the stretch. So I thought that was, again, a little bit of just an acknowledgement of what is at stake at this point of the season and how critical each one of these games is. Certainly for Ohio State, this is the toughest part of the schedule up ahead. There's only one game left that Ohio State plays against a team that's outside the top 36 at KenPom, and that is a road game at Penn State. So as KenPom sees it right now, Ohio State projected to lose to Virginia 75-71, projected to Virginia's 20th at KenPom. Then it's Wisconsin at home, number 36 at KenPom. Ohio State's projected to win that 80-78. And then it's at Michigan State, projected 77-67 loss, number 10 at KenPom. At Iowa, projected 76-70 loss to number 23 Iowa. Though the Hawkeyes just lost at Maryland tonight. That is mind-blowing to me. They go to Iowa on the 25th, and then it's home against number 9 at KenPom, Purdue, on March 1st, projected 78-74 loss. So there's a 3-game losing streak projected in there for Ohio State before the Buckeyes then go to Penn State, 129th at KenPom, and then finish out the season at home against Indiana on Senior Day. And Indiana is 34th at KenPom right now. These games are going to be critical, and it made winning this one all the more important as Ohio State improves to 16-8 overall and 8-6 in the Big Ten. So I think that's going to wrap this one up for me for now. Got a couple more things to write here in the next couple days, and then heading down to Nashville for the game on Saturday. If you're there and you see me, say hi. And if you're going to be there, shoot me a message. Let me know. But for now, I think that's about all I've got out of this game. As always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardyddispatch.com. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, for getting this out to you all. I'll be back with you after the game in Nashville against the Cavaliers. So look for that in your feed on Sunday. Until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.